Greetings Summoners, Cosmic here and welcome back to another Battle Spirits Saga video, and today I am joined by the one and only PrimitiveKage, who you might know from Digimon battle videos, going through some starter deck battles today. So this will be just some modified starter decks, and the thing I'll mention up front is the meta themselves for the starter decks is really more of a who can go wide and maybe a couple value plays, and there's not much expression there, but we will certainly see a lot more of that expanded on within the first meta in the first set. And there will be, we're recording over Discord, so there will be a little bit of lag here and there as the videos kind of stutter and what have you, but we were doing the best that we could. So starting things off here, we just have a Spirit and a Nexus deployed out. Your early turns in Battle Spirits Saga are really going to be building out those various cost reduction strategies. Nexus cards, as we've mentioned, are really great at that, because it's not something that your opponent can easily interact with, and it always counts for one reduction. One thing else you'll notice is early life is usually okay to take because you're getting ramped, and especially in the yellow deck, you have a couple issues with going wide early enough to get to pressure damage, so taking a couple early lives doesn't hurt too bad. I usually like going down to 2 or even 3 just to make sure I have some extra cores to play with. I will say this card is really great. The Cat Sith prefer being able to churn through your deck, but it is quite expensive. So in some of the later videos, you'll notice that it ends up missing, and because of its low cost or low power and high cost, it can be really, really bad. So you want to make sure that you have a lot of 2-cost cards in your deck. Here I was considering trying to play it around various core removal just to try to keep some units on the board, or if I just wanted to try to maybe offer a trade against his 1-drop and just probably play a more value game long term, because we'll eventually have things like Friezatol, which will allow us to draw a bunch of extra cards. But the Nexus that we have being able to help replace our own units is also really big for us, because we can just most likely flip another 2-drop off the top and draw it. And I'll mention again, this is some of the very early games that we've been playing with these, still learning the cards, still learning what the various value breakpoints are, and trying to figure out what's best in terms of, how many blockers do you leave up. So here again, we're kind of shortcutting, through flash steps and stuff like that, but he is also deciding just to take it from the life, give him an extra core to work with, which again, purple can have some more costly cards that we'll see in the main set. So again, getting a core or 2 extra early game isn't too bad. It's very similar to, say, One Piece, where you don't mind taking those first couple cards from life because it could be a key piece that you're missing, or in general, it's just okay to take the couple points of damage. Then we're going to deploy the Sergo Snake. This is an interesting one that, while not too exciting kind of early on, but whenever it has a soul core on it, it can try to chip through some damage. Now, thankfully, we do have a blocker, but again, building out that cost reduction strategy to help smooth out some of their turns. Here, I was tired of letting him have the free draw value off the Assassin, so we're just going to offer a block and trade. Unfortunately, he's already +1 off of it by attacking twice, so he's gotten his value from the card. He doesn't really care, and I am losing a unit. One of the best ways to beat the yellow deck, if they're not able to just hold on to a bunch of cards or have an early draw engine come online, is just start chipping away their board and they're unable to go wide. And Friezatol is one of the best cards, if not the best card, in the yellow starter deck. I expect this to be an absolute 4 of staple in the main set, just for what allows you to do. And again, if you have 2 of them on the field, if one of your 2-cost units dies, you will get to draw 2 cards. So early on, this can provide a lot of card advantage, which is exactly what the yellow deck needs. And us setting a burst. And a lot of, I believe this game and the next game, there was me trying to figure out how many cores do I want to put on my spirits versus what type of removal will my opponent have. And that's one of the key learning points that you'll have in this game against purple, is understanding, okay, core drain is 3, the mummy card is 1, stray soul is 1, and then dark grail can take you from 2 to 1, and then they combo with removal. So they're going to use a poison shot here off the block, lets them cycle a card and get to draw something. They're choosing, if they could, they would be able to pay for the burst cost here as well, which would get to shoot another core, but we're just going to go into their turn. So Poison Shot is a great flexible card for purple because it can help you cycle through the deck, which is something they do struggle with early on. If you don't hit the right cards, you won't have enough draw power, and here's where he's realizing he can actually use the Poison Shot, so we went back, and then that also triggers Soap Bubble Lakeside with 2 triggers because I lost 2 guys, so we're kind of catching up to our triggers here, but I only get the 1 card. So again, Soap Bubble, at least being able to help us replace 1 card is going to be such a huge deal as kind of this grindy game normally plays out. So unfortunately, I was only using 3 in my deck at this time. It's definitely going to be a 4 of. It is costly for yellow, and it feels pretty bad if you don't see it turn 1, but I think the card is just good enough that you kind of have to play it at 4 unless we get some other nexus. So here is one of the first misplays that comes up, and it will come up quite a bit. So there's 2 things here. It does have to be exhausted, so he wouldn't have been able to use the core drain here. And then also for Friesital's effect, it's only during combat. And I think I do catch it here, but I know later on in one of the other games, I did miss it a couple times. So again, timing is very, very important. Make sure you double check your cards because some, especially in yellow, some are attack only during your attack steps, some are both attack steps, and it kind of goes back and forth. Here we're going to play a Prince Penton. It's going to reveal something off top. We're going to get to draw it. Feels great. One of the best 2 drops that we want to see. It was so nice. I'm going to do it again. Unfortunately, this one's a miss. Again, it can only hit the 2 costs, but Prince Penton has definitely been even better than I thought it was going to be. It's a great 2-drop, and honestly, we have so many 2-drop vanillas. I'm really hoping we get more 2-drops in the main set anyways to replace it. But here we're just kind of trying to build out the board again to see what type of systems we can get going. So again, this is where I was trying to play around various core removal, and that's why I'm stacking up 4 here on the Friesital. But again, it's very unlikely that they can remove more than 2 in a turn because that would be like double Mummy, which would be very expensive already. And as long as it's not exhausted, you can play around most of the removal in purple, other than the Dark King Snake, which can be quite powerful in just stripping a creature. As long as you can get to level 2 the turn you play it, it is killing anything that it wants to on attack. A little bit of back and forth here, just trying to figure out what power levels are at. The Mummy being a 5k blocker is super relevant, actually. A lot of our spirits in the yellow deck can go up to 4 at most, so it's either we have to have the Drowsy spell to reduce their guys by 2k BP, or we're just kind of locked out of our options for attacking, which sometimes we just want to cycle anyways. So maybe an attack here would have been fine because we get both the draw from Friesital and we also get the Soap Bubble. So I probably should have attacked here. But again, this is one of the first games I've played yellow versus purple in particular, so I wasn't sure where to value general card draw versus just getting things going. So here's the big bad guy as mentioned. So he has 2 relevant effects here. The on summon effect is going to allow him to strip all cores from 1 spirit down to 1, and then if he puts it to level 2, on attack he can remove 1 core from a spirit, which again, as the spirit goes down to 0 cores, they are no longer able to stay in the field. And looks like he is going to sacrifice one of his spirits so he can get that effect. So he's going to push his Dark King Snake to level 2. So he's going to get the core strip ability on attack. And then he's just trying to figure out, okay, well, do I just die on the crackback because I only have 4 life and 1 blocker? But he realizes that he needs to get this key threat off the board as soon as possible. So something to note here is what I was about to say with the other one. Because last known information, this is a core strip effect, not a destroy effect like, say, Andromeda. The spirit goes down to level 0 effectively, so I should not have got the draw there, whereas if it was Andromeda that was just, deleting it while it was in the field, then you would. So you do have to be very mindful of what type of removal and interaction your opponent's using and if you get the card draw or not. So another Prince Penton, apparently I just love them. They're all going to come to the field for me. And you can see I'm just stacking up all my cores onto the spirits. So this is something that's important to note. Like, you can move any of your cores during your main phase, right? So I could shuffle these around as much as I wanted on my various pentons. And you can also just pay cost off of them, be it spells or spirits, I guess, or nexus as well. So feel free to, after you play your first spirit, just go ahead and stack them on, and then freely distribute them before you go to your attack step. So you can, because once you go to attack step, they are locked in. So here I'm going to use the bunny, and I'm going to swing with a 6k, which is going to be bigger than what he has on his board. And then the level 2 effect allows me to refresh something if I wanted to. But again, he has Bloody Rain here, so it is just going to prevent us from attacking. It's whenever the burst happens, you lose a life. And then I cannot attack with a spirit unless I remove a core from it. So I could get one more attack in here with the penton, but otherwise just generally not worth it. And it's good to get a Bloody Rain, kind of make him have it sort of thing here early, so I can try to build out the board and swing through it on a following turn. They are very limited in the number of walls, or types of walls as they would be called in Battle Spirits, they're gonna have answers to. So checking one early makes us feel pretty good, and a lot of times you will just be going for chip damage in these matches just to try to check what their burst is and try to line up something on the next turn. So even with just the starter decks, there is a lot of strategy in planning that you have to put into these turns. That gets me really excited to see where set 1 is going to land. Also, not me totally telegraphing here, reorganized my graveyard to put the 2 Friezatals on top, but that is an imaginary gate in my burst. And I really like the card because it allows us to get back our core engine. So sometimes you just want to go wide, and I make this mistake later in one of the games, but sometimes you just want to go wide. So like Prince Penton's actually better to get back than Friezatal. And that might not be always true in the future when we have more of set 1, but getting the card draw is nice, but sometimes you just want the immediate impact off the top to try to go wide. So you play Prince Penton, hit a 2-drop, draw into it, and now you suddenly have 2 attackers. Yep, and here's where we get to finally resolve it. So it's when summoned. So he did get to use Pendacles. We mill 2 cards and get 2 cards back. As mentioned, I'm going to grab the 2 Friezatals here because they are really important card draw engines that are going to be nice to use on the following turn. And the graveyard's unfortunately cut off. I don't remember if it was this game or the next one, but there was one where it's like 1 Prince Penton and a Friezatal, and I think I should have done like the split. And here I'm just using the burst effect on the imaginary gate to put it up to effectively 4k currently, because it's at level 2, which is a 2k, and then the plus 2,000 from the imaginary gate because we paid the burst cost as well, or the flash cost on the burst, excuse me. So here he's going to attack. It is at level 2 again, so he does get to strip something. And what's nice here is because I was able to, and I'm checking double checking like the BPs and whatnot, because I was able to get that imaginary gate trigger and give my Penton 2k, I'm actually able to use the Drowsy card here to put his Pendacles to a 4k, so we're going to cause a trade in the spirits, which is really great because now, again, he only has a couple cards left. Now, I do miss my Soap Bubble Lakeside trigger here, which was a bummer, to say the least. But it does happen. So again, it is 3 or less. So for the bunny, it's not a miss trigger, but remember, it does have to be 3 or less cost and get to go from there. So he has no defense. This is him telegraphing pretty hard that it is a Bloody Rain. So what's going to happen is I know as long as I have 2 cores on each spirit, and you can see I have a bit of a grip here because yellow just loves drawing a bunch of cards, and you saw me get 2 back from Imaginary Gate. As long as I have 2 cores on each spirit after the first attacker, I should be able to swing for, as many spirits as I can put on the board. So the important part is that I kind of try to clean up here towards the end is the first attacker only needs 1 core on it. Then it's going to trigger the life burst, and then the other 4 can swing freely. So really quickly there, just putting out some spirits on the board, correctly playing around the burst and get rewarded for it and win game 1. Going into game 2, we get to see another Prince Penton into a hit, which is always nice. One thing I learned too while trying to play this match out and thinking about it from longer term is I did not mulligan aggressively enough at all for playing yellow, and I should have had way more aggressive lines. But that's all comes down to trying to figure out the game and figuring out what pieces you want to look for. But again, the Lakeside Nexus is absolutely insane and definitely should have been a 4 of, and something I should have mulliganed for a lot more aggressively in this matchup, especially knowing that, you know, in game 2, they're on purple. And I think a big reason why I ended up keeping this hand is because I had double Prince Penton, if I remember correctly, which, you know, in theory is great, but I think there definitely could have been more exciting openers that I had. But double Prince Penton off the bat, both hitting, is certainly a very good feel. And here I had the option to play another Spirit from my hand, but because he showed me the bat, I don't want to give him a free card draw by splitting out my cores. Plus, it's a 2k blocker, so he can't just chip in damage off the Demo Bones guy. So that's just trying to play a bit more defensively here on the early turns. And again, for your first, you know, 2-3 turns, probably a lot of it's going to be deploying Nexus, trying to dig for a burst, or just trying to set up some spirits so you can work towards that cost reduction. That is a huge part of Battle Spirits Saga. And as mentioned, we got 3 units on the board here already from Primitive. Again, this is something that you're going to see quite often in the starter deck meta because it really is just a lot of go wide strategies. Again, there is a bit of removal. The starter decks do a great job at showing, okay, this is what each color wants to be doing, and it's really nice. But beyond that, it does, at a high level at least, boil down to, okay, who has better strictly card advantage, like yellow just being able to get a bunch of spirits and go wide, or it's just like, okay, well, I have all these free stuff that I can play out, go wide in a turn, and then kill you that way without a lot of you know, meaningful bursts that we have yet. So play Cat Sith here unfortunately whiffed on both. So even though the Prince Penton was off to a great start, the cat does not hit for us, which again feels very, very bad when these start to miss. I think I bumped the ratios up to 24 or 25 2 costs in the deck just to, you know, try to figure out what that, like, okay, if half the deck is 2 costs, what does that look like for Cat Sith and then also for Lakeside? But again, you are still going to miss sometimes. That's just how it is. And here's where I get a little bit punished because Primitive is able to just draw a card for free. And it's something I just really couldn't play around anymore at this point. Cat Sith is pretty expensive for what it is, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we're starting to dig for pieces or making sure that we're just establishing a board and really just digging for Freeze-It-All. So I don't know if that's going to be the trend in the set 1 meta going forward, but finding your little draw koala is probably the most important thing that you're doing within yellow, and the fact that it's a 2 cost, you can just always hit it off all your various effects, does certainly help out a lot. So really looking forward to seeing what other key 2 drops we get in set 1, but the koala is quite nice. Here's me trying to do it again, and of course another double whiff, which is again an absolutely terrible feeling, but we are still playing out the yellow strategy kind of as we need to, right? You still want to be playing out these cards, try and dig for pieces that you might be missing, and then also it just helps putting another spirit on the board for blocker reasons. 1k power might not that be exciting, you know, kind of at all their level 1s, but again, with yellow you specialize in going wide, so the power level doesn't matter that much because you're gonna have ways to either change that in combat or just refresh one of your units and get an extra attack in. Skullfly is the vanilla free cost, as it were, 2 cost 2 reduction. Again, just helping kind of the go wide strategy here. And again, the bat is looking to get another card draw because we are having to start go wider on our board, and that's going to really stress our cores that are available to us. So a lot of this match really comes down to, okay, which ones are we blocking with? And here's where I can finally try to get a trade where it's the cat's big enough plus the drowsy fumes is going to make them equal. So again, able to shut down the card draw engine from Primitive side, but he already got 2 card draw off of it, so probably more than okay at this point that he had to that he's losing the bat. But especially the core strategy we're mentioning and how purple can pretty easily strip. This is something that I expect we'll see some type of core, I don't want to say ramp because that's not the best term for it, but like, you know, if your yellow spirit dies, get a core or something within the first set, because this deck just really eats through your core pool quite quickly. And again, that's very much a balancing thing, right? But it would be nice to see what the Fabled Beast might have in terms of core strengthening. Spiral Tower lets us play a 2-drop for free, which is nice to get the Angel out. It's nice to have a Nexus, but honestly, I think this is the one that I will end up cutting. It's featured as a 4 of in the starter deck. I think it's really good for, we do get to use the level 2 in the third game for, you know, showing how you can bounce certain things back to your hand and get more value out of your on-summon effects, but ultimately, I'm just not that impressed with the Nexus, and I know we're going to be getting something, at least one yellow Nexus, probably 2 in the main set, that Spiral Tower will get cut. I think you do want about 6 Nexus cards in general, just to make sure you have that early reduction, but Spiral Tower is just not all that exciting unless we see something that really wants to try to pressure the on-summon multiple times, where like Prince is okay, but I don't think it's worth the heavy investment from Spiral Tower. And then Primitive played the Mimura just to kill a creature, and this is the turn where I decide, it's like, okay, well, I can try to chip in a point of damage, and if they block, I'll just bounce Prince Penton back to my hand. So this is one of those board states where it's interesting that you can chip in a damage, and it's very unlikely that they're going to block. But again, our opponent's at 4, and I just wasted those 2 cores by not developing my board anymore or strengthening a couple of my spirits so they just don't get freely removed. So I'm not totally in love with this play. And here you can see us immediately getting punished for it with by Stray Soul able to kill the Prince Penton. And it's just, it leaves a little bit to be desired. So I forget what was in my hand exactly at this time, but not at all impressed with the Spiral Tower. And again, just working on some key core placement. I think that's, again, one of the major learning curves a lot of new players will hit, is understanding what the various breakpoints are, both in just like general good removal. So remember, Landmine being 3k and Volcanic Break being 6k at the top end. Those are like your 2 key numbers to pay attention to. But then also just in general combat, we've seen, at least in the starter deck meta and some of the early, you know, Star Dragon versus Rex matches we've been playing, just a 2000 power swing, so like Drowsy Fumes that we've been playing in this matchup, is actually quite significant and can swing a, you know, block in your favor. And then if you think about all the defensive options that White has, be it with Holy Elixir or otherwise, there's a lot that White can do there in terms of getting 2k or 3k power. So my favorite card that I horribly misplayed in all of our games is Arvita. So this is a really interesting card. If your opponent is low on life, it's a very great card to pressure their life, saying, okay, well, I have to block it, but they're just going to get another attacker. So that one card then effectively takes the spot of two spirits, right, that are trying to block. Or if you're playing it on defense, which is what I should have done here, it's a flat when destroyed, so you can actually get 2 blockers out of this card as well, which again in some cases is going to be the correct thing to do because it allows you to attack with 1 more other spirit during your more offensive turn. So really love this card overall. I get heavily punished for, you know, misplaying it here, but it's another card I put it at 3 of in the deck, and I feel like that's still the right number because, one, it's not a 2 cost, and the other part is you don't want to see it until mid-game so you can actually get value off of it. But there might be a case where you're just drawing enough cards and churning through the deck fast enough where playing this at 4 is probably okay. But again, so far, definitely one of my favorite cards in the starter decks. Again, a slight misplay here because Core Drain does have to be exhausted. And this is one that comes up quite a bit because, again, like typical removal in card games coming from other, again, Primitive himself being a Digimon player, primarily, and myself coming from like Magic and other stuff like that, the exhausted clause doesn't come up a lot, so it's more like just, oh, purple gets removal and it gets the effect. So he is able to kind of go wide here and swing for lethal. Now, he did have a few more cards in hand, so like this is him. I was just telling him like, hey, I'm dead here on board, just play a bunch of spirits and attack. It is very likely that he had another spirit, so if he didn't pay that 1 cost, right, he could move around his cores because there was still a couple on Mummy, and he would just be able to attack freely. So there, slight misplay, but it shouldn't have changed the outcome of the game. So by this point, all the cards have been shown other than the Purple Smoke Valley, which he played turn 1. And I did cut into this one a little bit early, which is just going to be an insane card value engine for him this game. So I'm starting it off with my Cat Sith again, getting to draw some extra cards, which always feels great, but we are going to see kind of the purple engine coming online and me dying with a lot of cards in hand because I didn't value certain attacks in a certain way that I should have. So a really great learning game overall, but there's definitely more I want to try out with the yellow deck once we get more set one spoilers. So double Purple Smoke Valley is a very scary opener, not only in starter decks, but just in general, because now every time that he core depletes something and it dies, he is going to draw 2 cards. And this is basically one of the best things you could ask for in purple. We play another Cat Sith here. We actually get 2 more cards, so we are actually +2 overall on these, and we're going to go ahead and swing and get in a point of damage. Now again, core ramping is quite a bit scary after he showed us that he has Purple Smoke Valleys doubled up, but unless we can find a turn that we want to go wide here, I think this is where we realize that, hey, we need to just try to end this game quickly, or we're just going to die due to the advantage here in the Purple Smoke Valley. So here's where we use the core drain again. Remember, it strips 3. Here we actually do it right, funny enough, but he is going to get to draw 2 because both of those will trigger, because there's no timing on it or anything like that. It doesn't say, like, during attack or anything. It's just straight up kill your guy, I draw 2 cards, which is quite good, as you might imagine. And I think this is like a big reason why I am excited for purple. This part now is a misplay because it's only supposed to be exhausted, so he should have ended up playing a spirit, but he is going to get to draw 2 more cards. So again, from a technical standpoint, like, I would have tried to put in another point of damage here on the next turn, so he would have just done it next turn and then draw 2 cards. But he is able to play out a couple things. And again, those core removals only being a 1 cost is pretty insane. And now he's going to swing, put me down to 4, and go into my turn with a empty board, and our opponent is looking absolutely stacked in this game. So, 3 reductions through Nexus. I have no Nexus in play. I'm just praying for this Penton to find us some cards. Again, just putting all the cores on it because why not? Do the Penton loop again. First one hit. Second one is a Spiral Tower, which would have been really nice. So, we did hit pretty early on the Cat Siths. I can't complain too much, but this is a part where I am not feeling great about this game at all anymore. And Friezatal's nice here, might help us draw some extra cards, but if our opponent kind of hits Mummy, or if we try to attack and then he has a Stray Soul just to keep generating all that card value, it's going to put us in a very, very rough spot. And again, this mistake is probably much bigger than the previous ones, again, only because obviously the card has to be exhausted, but also because it's our Friezatal, which is going to change how this game plays out. Now, again, it is only during your attack when it triggers, so purple can get around it probably the best out of any of the colors, because, red wants to put you in combat and whatnot, but being able to shut off our draw engine here feels pretty bad, to say the least. And here's where I make sure that we are good about it, and we say, like, oh, hey, we got to make sure we get our Imaginary Gate triggers, mill 2, get 2 costs back, get Prince and Friezatal, and just try to bring something online again. So we'll take another point of damage, which is, it's great that we're ramping up 2 cores, but again, our opponent has all the cards in hand. Smoke Valley is creating insane value, and it's going to be, in general, very difficult to come back from this board state. The double Friezatal now in our hand is strong, but again, we really need to see our Lakeside in this matchup. And then this is me just shortcutting, paying 2, and then moving 2 cores over. So now we get to draw 2 cards when something dies. And again, trying to move my cores around so they stack up where I don't have to worry about a single Mummy killing. It would have to be double Mummy to remove 2 cores in a single turn. And this is probably just us going back and forth on either some ruling or some BB questions, just to understand, is there a good attack here that I can try to chip in a point of damage? I ultimately decide to do so because it's a 4K. And his mummy card is not at a 5k blocker yet. So this one at least should, you know, either they just give it up as a chump or, you know, we get through a point of damage. So they do decide just to chump it here. He thought it was the other burst, so this is a bit of a mistake. It should have been Poison Shot instead of Bloody Rain. So yay, free information, but obviously just a small play mistake. I was trying to get used to all the different burst cards. So playing out the mummy, giving himself another value blocker. Again, this is part of the vanillas that had 3 reductions, so they're cheaper to play. You're more good mid-range threats because their BP, I think, goes up to like 7k or 8k even if you're in the white deck, but really some good, nice defensive options early on. Putting 2 cores on his Dark Grail, so if I kill something of his in combat, he's actually going to have to draw a card, and largely this is just because of, you know, they have maybe not much else in their hand they wanted to play this turn. Maybe they think I'm going to block 1k or 2k, but here just using it to use it. Again, with the core drain here, it should have been the Penton, and then also you don't draw here from the koala because it is only during the attack step. So again, purple is able to get around this quite well because all their effects are going to be during the main, other than Dark King Snakes. So something to keep in mind for future turns. But again, new players trying to learn the game and try to put out some content so people can see like how these games would go overall. And honestly, again, for the starter decks, I'm pretty happy with them in terms of how well that they played out. And I'm really looking forward to set 1 spoilers. Burning our lakeside here feels very bad, so we really needed to hit a Nexus at some point just to help with our cost reductions, and some of those level 2 effects are really nice. But here you can see I'm starting to build out a board again with the Prince Pentons and Friezatals, and this is where, I think this is like the turning point where I threw the game. I really should have just focused on drawing the extra cards and like just throwing out the attacks and trying to dig for the Calamity Beast, or even Chain Angel would have been really good here, just to try to force out some magic and kind of that repeated value of making sure one thing can't block and then playing another magic. So if they do block, I'm going to kill whatever it is. So here they're using the Bloody Rain, which makes sense. We do have at least one extra attacker. Might have saved it for an extra turn where we're trying to go wide, but if he has another one in its hand, it's fine just to like kind of save the chip damage here. But we are at 3 life. They have 4 attackers. It's, you know, 4-4 at this point, but because the way the starter decks are designed, it is very easy to go wide with some of the lower costs or free units they have. So here is where I'm just like putting my hand down the table because there are so many cards. And yes, there was a slight mistake there with the Friezatol getting to draw 2 off the core drain, but ultimately this is really where you would expect the yellow deck to be, right? All the Prince Penton triggers, Cat Sith getting you +2 cards, that a lot of the times you are just going to want to purely focus on card advantage, go wide in a turn, and then swing it out. And you can see that I'm holding 3 Sword Angels because I was trying to play around a Bloody Rain, and the way I was trying to line up these turns was trigger a Bloody Rain. He played the one. The fact that he played another burst lets me know that he probably has another one. I need to trigger 1 more burst, check it if it's Bloody Rain or not, and then on the next turn I can play those 3 Sword Angels for free because they only cost, or they don't cost anything because they're 2 cost 2 reduction, and I only have to put 1 core on them. I can suddenly surprise my opponent with 3 extra attackers out of nowhere. So here we're using a Drowsy just to get a unit off the board on his side, because it is attack. I am going to draw 2, but again, this is ultimately where I needed to leave back a couple blockers because he still does have a pretty wide board, and I didn't value just playing out the Sword Angels on this turn just to get some more blockers and then try to punch through on the next turn for a win. So again, doesn't feel great dying with, you know, I think I had like 12 cards in hand or something absolutely ridiculous, but again, this comes down to, it's a starter deck meta, trying to play around certain burst cards that I might have not been expecting. It was just the starter decks, but really trying to just plan out the turns. And Battle Spirits Saga is a game that you just have to play it out and see where different power turns line up, be it, and here you can see I'm starting to flood the board a little bit, just trying to get some cards out. But it really depends on, like, okay, is 1k good enough? How many attacks do I need to go wide? And there will be some strategies that just say, hey, I'm going to try to build enough card advantage where I can just get 10 swings in a turn and end the game that way. Now, there will be things like Bloody Rain and Firewall and probably a Burst Wall eventually that prevent your opponent from doing that, but they haven't been spoiled yet at the time of this recording, so it's kind of a wait and see. But Bloody Rain is a hell of a card for what we'd expect to see within set 1 and kind of where things are going from there. So Bloody Rain, I'm sure, is going to be a staple. Here we're drawing 2 because it is combat. Again, should have only been 1 because the koala itself would die. And then we just go into a kind of a pass turn here. So good kind of a closing note there is the core removal. Because it would be treated at level 0, you most likely do not get the card draw, but if it was destroyed by battle or destruction effect, then you would. Yep, and another case here is where Primitive is just going to, again, they had the double Smoke Valley, so they were drawing a bunch of cards this game as well. Here they're just going to flood the board. They know that we don't have a way to stop attacks other than our 4 blocks, so they're just going to do some quick math, distribute their cores, and go for a win, especially the Mummy here, which is just going to straight up kill one of my blockers anyway. So that's it for today's video. It is a little bit longer, but I want to try to get some starter deck content out there. I hope you all appreciate it. This took a lot more time and effort than I expected, so I'm not going to say that every video will have this amount of detail and voiceover and all that stuff with it, but I will certainly try to do my best. So with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week. Make sure to stay hydrated. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future Battle Spirits Saga content. And then also in the very near future, we will be doing some type of spoiler reviews and whatnot, but we're kind of waiting to see. It looks like all red's going to be first, so I might just wait until all the red cards are done and we'll go from there. But obviously, I'm really excited for yellow, so we'll have to just wait and see where spoiler season goes. So with that, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next Battle Spirits Saga video. Bye.